Welcome to Self-Funded. I'm your host, Chrissie Francona. 10 years ago, starting a business around yourself was something reserved for celebrities. Today, professionals everywhere are breaking away from the 9-to-5 and building businesses around their own experience and expertise. On this show, we'll explore what it really means to be self-funded, the movement of professionals carving their own path, creating cash-flowing businesses, and building lasting impact without waiting for permission. I'll share my own journey and talk with others who are rethinking what's possible when you take your career into your own hands. Let's dive in. Today on the podcast, I have Joy Taylor. Joy is the managing director at Alliant Consulting, but has a long history of starting and running companies, from a tour boat operator to multiple successful exits in the consulting industry. Joy and I were introduced a few months ago, and I immediately knew that I wanted to have her on Self-Funded. In particular, she is a great example of one of the self-funded principles, that businesses start with a business need and a personal need. On two separate occasions, she has started her own shop because of some personal challenges she had as a mom and then as a daughter caring for aging parents. It's a great story for anyone who is dealing with their own inflection points, and Joy is, as her name would suggest, just an absolute pleasure to connect with. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Joy Taylor, welcome to Self-Funded.
Thank you. It's delightful to be here.
When I met you, I was just like, I have to have you on this because I feel like your career in so many ways has been an example of what I consider to be self-funded, of something that is driven both by your personal need and desire, but also highly ambitious and successful in building your own business multiple times. So I'm excited to get into all of it. But I want to start with really your earliest days. So you were born into this entrepreneurial family, ferry boat operators in a town of 21 people. Is that right?
That is correct. In the middle of nowhere, Missouri. Yeah.
How did that upbringing influence your view of work and in particular ownership?
I really love this question because what's fascinating to me is my roots really are the foundation of everything I've ever done. And I'm not denying that. I was born in a small town in Missouri, in the Boot Hill of Missouri, and my father and my grandfather ran a ferry service 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And they would wake up every day, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and go to work. I would go with them on many days as a child because I loved being with them. I would ride a horse back to the house. I'd go to school. And then I'd ride a horse back to the ferry and I'd work with them. And we'd come home and have dinner at like 5 or 6 o'clock and start the journey over again the next morning. But what's fascinating is what I learned is do the work. Mm-hmm. Do the work. And don't ask people to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. My grandfather would say that all the time. He really did believe, in terms of running a ferry service and running a business, he's like, it is not appropriate to ask someone to do something you don't like to do if you've never done it extensively. And for a small business, it's important to understand all the elements of your business so that you know how to hire someone who is ideally smarter than yourself. Mm-hmm. And he really leaned in on those kinds of lessons, if you will, and that hard work really does pay off.
So you actually saw your father place a pretty big bet on himself when you were in elementary school. He ended up deciding to go back to medical school. Yes. Can you talk about what that was like and your earliest impressions of, that and how it influenced your path?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. So, my dad went to Georgia Tech undergraduate and had a master's degree in engineering, actually. And, we lived in this small town, my mom, my dad, my brother, and I. And one day, I was young. I was really young, 5, I guess, maybe 6. But they announced that my dad was going to leave for a while and go to medical school. And actually, my mom and dad kind of left. And so my brother and I stayed in the care of my grandparents, mainly because my grandmother was a teacher. That kind of helped. But education was always a really important part of our family. And so my dad going to medical school was more of a commitment to community because his intention was to come back and be a community doctor. It didn't end up that way, but that was, I think, his original intention. But that going to pursue your dreams and working hard and making a sacrifice was really important. And the irony is, I tell people a lot, we were really poor in my mind. I don't eat baked beans very often because we ate them a lot as a child. And that's actually not a joke. They taste good to me, but man, they bring up some memories. But making sacrifices for a period of time is worth the payoff. And of course, my father was finished with medical school. We ended up relocating, and I actually grew up in Florida. But I would go back to Missouri every summer and spend the summers working with my grandfather on the ferry until he retired.
Wow. Was that, did you know your father had, I mean, you were so young at the time, but did you know that was something your father had always wanted to do and had put off? Or how did this notion of like pursuing your dream play out in your understanding of your father's experience?
That's actually an interesting question. All I've ever known is that my father was ridiculously smart. My father read at least a book a day. And now I'm not talking John Grisham books. I'm talking engineering or science fiction or history, or he was a voracious reader and took education really seriously. And he was a committed community man. So he really believed in giving back to his community in whatever way that was possible. And where we lived, healthcare just really wasn't at its best. But I do believe that pursuing his medical degree was something he had always wanted to pursue. He was from a small town, and he wanted, I'm going to say these words out loud, but I think he wanted out. I think he wanted out of the small town, and he wanted to try something new for his family. And that meant leaving. And we did. Like I said, we went to Clearwater, Florida, and I grew up there.
Wow. So let's fast forward a bit. I have to ask you, your first professional experience, you end up working for the Yankees and ultimately get, I'm going to say, fired by George Steinbrenner. What was that like? And tell me that story.
So, yes, I went to graduate school at the University of South Florida. I have an MBA, Master's in Marketing, and a Master's in Statistics. And for those of you listening to the podcast here, back in that day, jobs were posted in the paper. So I took notice that there was an interview taking place in a conference center. And I thought, that is interesting. And I was very fortunate that when I showed up there, it was for a marketing and public relations job. Didn't know at the time who I would be working for. But I made it through that process, and I did end up working for Mr. George Steinbrenner in the spring training facility. So it was literally the building of the spring training facility, which is now across, has always been across the street from the Tampa Bay Buccaneer football stadium. And working for a person like the Steinbrenner organization was far harder than I had anticipated. And what I mean by that is he was a perfectionist, very demanding. Complete excellence, complete loyalty to the brand, and ironically to community. So he was quite a philanthropist. People don't talk too much about Mr. Steinbrenner being a philanthropist, but he really was. But one day he came into my office and he's like, listen, I'm going to fire you today. And I thought, I was, like 26 years old. I'm like, have I done something wrong? And he's like, no, you are just uniquely qualified to do something that one of my friends needs. And I thought, what's happening here? And he put me in touch with and introduced me to two gentlemen who wanted to do, of all things, start a ferry service.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar, exactly. I'm like, oh, I can do that. And it was to take passengers from Southwest Florida to Key West every day. It was a company called Key West Excursions. And we took a high-speed catamaran vessel, so one from Fort Myers Beach, one from Naples, and one from Marco Island, and went to Key West every day. I think it was 554 passengers a day, round trip. And it was 3.5 years of hard work, early days. And it was like being with family again, though. And I really loved that experience. And I was thankful. I became an owner of a business. I was granted the ownership, 25% of a business, and I'm 26 years old. But my job was to run the ferry, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So,
that's awesome. So how did you transition from that into really starting your corporate career up in New York? I know you were at, not only were you at GE, but you ended up working on Jack Welch's M&A team.
Yeah. So that would be Mr. Steinbrenner again. And I make no qualms about that. I feel very strongly about mentor relationships. and advocacy. And like, if you are going to be a mentor to someone, lean in. Don't fake your way through a mentorship. Be honest, be transparent, deliver the hard message sometimes. So when we sold the Ferry, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a career. Let us be clear. Those out there in the podcast land, it should be obvious to you that I do not have a straight career at all. Like, I am meandering all over the place. But when we sold the Ferry, I called Mr. Steinbrenner back and I said, I need help. You kind of took me off path, which was, I really wanted to be in business. I wanted to help organizations. I wanted to be in name brand organizations that I could explain to my parents and my friends. And he's like, I have an idea. Let me introduce you to one of my friends. And so he introduced me to Jack Welch. And I was very, very fortunate that I did join the GE family. I started at GE Lighting, and then I ended up at GE Americom, which was the satellite industry in Princeton, New Jersey, which is how I relocated from Florida back up to the Northeast into where I live now is in Pennsylvania, but it's right over the border of Princeton, New Jersey. And I worked at GE for a number of years, and I was very fortunate to be part of Jack's private merger, acquisition, and divestiture team. So when GE was looking at organizations to acquire or cleave from the family, I was one of the team members that got to participate in the evaluation of those organizations, the determination of viability of people, process, technology back in the day. And those are lessons that I could never buy in a single store, if you will. So I felt very lucky to be part of that family lineage.
Yeah. I mean, I know you had your MBA at that point, but that, was its own crash course in business, probably well beyond what you learned in the classroom.
Most definitely. And the irony is, and again, I'm speaking of both Mr. Steinbrenner and Jack Welch as if they were horrible, but they were the most wonderful leaders. They were both demanding. And maybe that's my thing. I don't know. I like working in demanding environments where the expectations are very high. And Jack was certainly that human. I mean, if Mr. Steinbrenner was intolerant, Jack took it to a whole new level. So
it sounds like demanding, but also they paid it forward too. Like you were someone who showed up and you delivered, and ultimately these are two really titans of their respective industries who played very significant roles in your career.
Most certainly. And what's really fascinating is I don't know who or who should, but somebody should have or still should evaluate the hiring practices for both the Yankees organizations and GE. GE was very well known for its bottom 10% methodology. Yep. Every year, get rid of the bottom 10%. And I will tell you that did work. At GE, without any hesitation, every single person I worked for at GE during those years that I was there, that tenure, are some of the brightest, strongest, most dedicated, influential, just voracious personalities in business. And I meet them in my world today. I have been on planes. I have been at companies, and you find out that there's a GE alum, and it's like a secret. It's like a secret society.
A secret society. Yeah. It's like a secret handshake you guys do.
More than that. I mean, the reality is it's a language. It's an immediate commitment to each other. How can I help you? Because if nothing else in the world of GE, it is, how can I help us? When you say, how can I help you? How can I help us? It really is all about performance. And if you made it at GE for longer than 3 years, you were good. You were very good. And I still would like to find out the hiring practices, like who wrote the algorithm, who wrote the questions, who was the mastermind in finding this level of talent repeatedly.
It's the finding the talent, but I think it's also the development of the talent, which obviously GE is very well known for as well. Oh,
I spent 8 solid weeks in training, getting my certification around. I'm a certified master black belt in Six Sigma and Lean Sigma. And they sent you away for 6 to 8 solid weeks to make sure you were well prepared for the life of those conversations, for sure. Some of the finest training in the world.
So you really had this incredible foundation. You had, the very structured experience, certainly as an MBA, but then also the GE structure and the rigor and the training and everything. And then you had these sort of very bespoke experiences from the Yankees. Certainly there was a training aspect to that, but I'm sure that was sort of every day presented different challenges, and certainly running a boat company also presented its own challenges. You then end up in consulting, where I feel like you probably ended up pulling tricks from all of these hats. Tell me a little bit about, you started at PwC, then you moved on to IBM, and then ultimately you started your own practice. Tell me a little bit about those early consulting days, and then we'll get more into you starting your own business.
Sure. It's a wonderful part of my life. So when I left GE, I left GE because we sold the business that I was associated with. And I thought, I really want to do something different. So I was lucky enough to have been hired by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I want to have a special call out. The truth of the matter is, I loved every minute of my time at PwC. And by going to PwC, I fell in love with consulting, and I knew I'd never do anything else, ever. I'm not sure that I want to. I love problem solving. I am an execution. I am a person who says, just start. Crawl, walk, run, whatever you need to do, but just move forward. And PwC really kind of taught me those core foundations of execute. Find the strategy. What do you want to accomplish? Go make it happen. And then PwC, unfortunately, due to the Enron scandal that took place, was forced to sell the consulting division to IBM.
Got it. That's how you ended up there.
That's how I got there. Exactly. I don't know that I would have ever made the choice to go to IBM. IBM was not part of my seek out journey, but again, learned a whole lot at IBM for the short period of time that I was there. And the reason I call out that I was there for a relatively short period of time is that I had gotten married and I'd had 2 children back to back. And my youngest daughter was born with special needs. And what I realized is the life of a consultant at that stage of my consulting career, the demands of travel, of work hours, of serving your client the way that great consultants do, my daughter needed me more. And so I quit. I didn't quit consulting as much as I knew that I needed to dedicate my energies, my gifts, my talents to family. And what I didn't suspect and didn't predict was that old clients, old contacts would call me and say, hey, I see that you're out of work. Maybe you wanted to help me a little bit here and there. Do you have 10 hours a week? Do you have 5 hours a week? And what I didn't expect was that it would turn into an actual business. And so I'm transitioning to that next stage, whereby one telephone call turned into 5 telephone calls, which turned into 10 telephone calls, which turned into a real company. And it became, TayganPoint Consulting Group was the company that I owned and operated for 13 years. And I built that up to about 120, 130 people. Wow. And then I graciously sold that in 2018 to Grant Thornton. And also loved my time at Grant Thornton. Again, I love consulting. And I felt very rewarded and proud and privileged to continue that journey. And I was a senior partner at Grant Thornton for 4 years. And then I left again. I may be going too far into the storyline, but I ended up...
We'll come back. Yeah. No, this is great.
But then I ended up leaving again because my father has dementia. And I wanted to spend some time with him. And I'm really proud to have made that decision. But again, clients just kept calling. And so I started yet again another consulting firm, which got acquired last year. And I'll stop right there and go on to another question, perhaps.
No, I think one of the really incredible things about your story is this mix of personal reasons for making career moves, but also this ambition and work ethic that has is a common thread in everything you've done. And so when I think about self-funded businesses, I like to say that there's always a personal need or desire. It's not something you go out to do and purely from the perspective of the business, but there is also a business need. Usually it's not usually as simple as, hey, I'm just gonna, I have this personal need, whether it's a child who needs care or a parent or some other, health issue, whatever it may be. And there's a reason why you're sort of stepping out of your job into something. But if that had been the only thing, I don't know that you necessarily would have built a business around it. So as you started to get those calls, what were you seeing from a business need perspective that sort of turned it from hey, I can pick up some work on the sides as I'm focusing on my daughter, to, oh, this is a legitimate company I'm building?
The day I couldn't deliver the work myself is when I realized I need help. I need a contractor. That was the first thing I did, is I found an independent consultant. There's, the independent consulting world is fantastic. I am a huge fan. And you find individuals that are looking for 2 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, 40 hours a week. And when I got my 10th contractor, I thought, I guess I better turn this into a real company, because I couldn't do the selling and the delivery and the invoicing and the collections and the banking and the writing of statements of work. And it's how businesses get started. The reality is you realize one day that you are limited because you do not have all these gifts and these talents. You cannot be great at all of these things, for which I am not. But man, you can find people who are. And that's the day that it becomes a real company. Yeah.
When you started out, what was your favorite part of the business? Like, were you the person did you love the selling of it? Did you love the delivery? Like, how did you think about maybe your strengths, and then where you, those first contractors where you were really supplementing?
I'm hesitating only because I'm trying to answer the question honestly, which is my off button is really far away. I know that about myself. If you ask me to do something and I commit to doing it, it will happen. Because there is no corner I will cut. There is no ditch I will not step in. I'll go make that happen. So I think I want to say the delivery. I love to execute. I like to get the work done. But I do have kind of a natural capability to sell. And what's taken time is to learn how to sell not myself, but my colleagues, my team, our services, our capabilities. And I will say that is the hardest jump, I believe, for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You know what you can do. I know I can do that. I know I can turn that wrench. I know exactly where to put that screwdriver. I know exactly where to put that hammer. I know how to do that. The problem is, when I've run out of 40 or 50 hours a week, do I ask my friend to do it? Well, what can they do? And so I think that's when a real entrepreneurialism begins to blossom, is when you bring in other people's gifts and talents and sell them alongside of yours.
That you're actually leading into what I consider to be a really important element of, again, what I'm describing as self-funded businesses, that they start in a very somewhat inefficient way. If you're trading your time for money, but there becomes this bigger business. And I think in particular, if you're doing consulting business, like it sounds like initially people were coming to Joy Taylor, like they weren't coming to the company. What were sort of the first signs that, okay, people are now coming to the business, not just to Joy? Was it people out of your network? Was it the way they were coming in? Tell me a little bit more about that transition.
It's actually two things. I would actually say, yes, it's when someone called and said, I worked with one of your people, and I'm wondering if you have someone else, which meant I was picking talent that was executing the way that we promised. We wrote a statement of work to do something and we actually achieved it. And someone said, that was a great experience. I want to do that again. And you build a brand around reliability, around consistency, around execution capability, and I'd like to believe transparency. It's one of my core foundations, and I'd like to believe that all the companies with which I tend to operate, transparency is probably one of the most important qualities, because I'm not a big fan of bait and switch. I am not a fan of change orders. I'm like, here's what it's going to cost. Here's what we're going to do. And if we don't spend it all, I'm not going to charge you for that. That's kind of how that played out. And then the second was when an organization that I'd never worked with, and they didn't work with someone that we knew, I heard about you from someone else. When the word of mouth spread to basically a complete stranger, you knew that you were onto something.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool moment. I've started to get a little bit of it with the long game, and it's a pretty cool moment.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Oh, actually, I'm going to add a third. You didn't ask about this, but I'm going to add a third.
Okay.
When someone calls you and says, I'd like to work for you. When someone says, when I want to uproot myself and bet my entire family's financial plan on coming to work for you, that's a day. That's a big day.
That is
because
a big day.
I want to go back ever so briefly to a statement you made, which is becoming an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart, because there's no guarantees that you're going to be successful. And you're going to probably fight for as long as you possibly can. And sadly, you might put yourself in a bad financial place at a certain point. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but some people just have this burning urge to not do what they're doing now. And I just want to try it on my own. That is great. I just want to prepare anyone who is thinking about doing that. Call someone who has done it. Call me. I am happy to talk to anyone about the pros, the cons, the don't do that. That did not work for me, but you can try it, but be on the lookout for X, Y, and Z. But surround yourself with people who have done it before you. You don't have to do it alone. There's plenty of books. There's plenty of people to call. Don't do it by yourself.
Well, and I think, that's how you and I first connected. So advice received and taken. But no, I think the interesting thing too on your experience is that you built something that you also exited, which isn't always the case. You can build a very profitable consulting business that generates cash flow for yourself. Other people have a good salary, but the fact is you actually built something that had like asset value and you were able to sell. At what stage did you start to think about that as an exit? So my story's probably not so unique, but it's certainly real. I had a partner. So when I owned TayganPoint Consulting Group, I had a partner. His name was John. And when John and I merged together, he was 10 years older than I was, which meant he was always going to be 10 years older than I was, which meant that the likelihood was great that he would probably want to retire before me. Well, the reality is when we got to a certain size, retirement for John meant that I'd have to buy him out. And the size of the company and at the age I wasn't willing to borrow the money to buy him out. And the reality was it became the notion of then we need to sell. And it was also a strategic conversation. I was ready to go be part of something bigger. My whole history had been at these massive firms, GE, IBM, and then TayganPoint, really small. I actually found comfort going back to Grant Thornton. Like I did. I felt comfortable knowing there is infrastructure, there's other high achievers, there's a market, there's a brand, there are current clients that know your name. There's opportunity for growth. And there was going to be opportunity for growth for my people that I could have never given them because our triangle was small. For an organization of that size, there's so many opportunities for your people to grow and develop. And I love that. I love that for them. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. It's an interesting journey to think about, in some ways it was strategic and in some ways not strategic, but there was also a forcing function. And so sometimes you end up making, even if it is sort of initiated by this forcing function, ultimately it ends up being the best decision you would have come to anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm wildly grateful for sure.
So you did it once and then you did it again. Tell me a little bit about leaving Grant Thornton, building something again on your own, and then you ultimately got a call to join Alliant. Correct.
So I did. I left Grant Thornton after 4 years. And I mentioned earlier, as I did so, my father was diagnosed with dementia. And the doctors were pretty clear. They said, listen, in about 18 months, he will stop making memories and they'll all be on you. And I thought, okay. And I wanted to help my mom and my dad transition this part of their life and be part of it, not just be a bystander. And my parents lived in Florida. And I lived in Pennsylvania, so I knew that there would be some limitations traveling if I didn't make some choices. So I left and I helped my mom and dad move into a community whereby they could both have their needs met. My mom is in independent living and my father was in memory care. And he just recently moved into the nursing care facility, which means his disease is progressing as suggested. And I just felt really good about that. But in the meantime, I got another telephone call from an old client, like a really old client. Interestingly enough, from my very first client that I ever had at TayganPoint, which I thought was fascinating.
That is funny.
And this individual called and said, listen, I need your help again. And I said, I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve. And that began to grow and grow and grow. And within a year, I had another 9 employees. And I thought, holy cow, this is crazy. And then I got a telephone call from the CEO of Alliant Group, and his name is Duval. And Duval says, listen, my board has suggested that we start a consulting division. Alliant Group does tax credits and incentives, and they are amazing at it. Like, it's a special sauce. They are extraordinary. Anyone out there that needs tax advice, please call me. I'll be happy to connect you. But he's like, listen, I want to start a consulting division because they serve 35,000 clients, but had never provided consulting services. So I joined about a year and a half ago. They acquired my company and we started over. And now a year and a half later, actually, we're at about 40 employees. And I think about that. It took me 10 years to get to that. The last time it took a year and a half. So we're doing something right. And I'm very proud to be part of the Alliant family. Definitely.
That's great. How do you think about that? You alluded to this of like doing it first yourself, now doing it within the structure of a bigger organization. How did you personally think about even the trade-offs associated with that as you made the decision, or making the decision to join Alliant?
So it is very interesting. So I have a partner, her name is Sandra Liebner, and a friend, Amy Flynn. All three of us are the managing directors of Alliant Consulting. And when we were out on our own, we would talk regularly. We're like, listen, it is so lonely. It's lonely out here by yourself. And the thought of finding a CFO or finding an HR person or finding an office manager, fill in the blank, seemed overwhelming. The thought of putting an ERP system in place or a CRM system in place or a time tracking system. And Duval called at a moment and said, listen, I have all of that. I have all of that. Just show up. And I have 35,000 clients that want to talk to you. And I thought, wow, who's going to turn that down? And therefore I did not. And then I talked my 2 friends into being acquired as well. And here we are today. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
One thing as you're talking, I think, you are very open about the personal reasons why you've pursued different things. I mean, you have worked with the biggest companies out there. I mean, I imagine in times where maybe that personal professional integration was not something that was as commonly seen or accepted. How have you thought about over time kind of building your career with this integration? And has that been a strength with clients, or has that ever caused friction? I mean, even you mentioned like early on in, working in like what I'd call big consulting, the hours and it wasn't necessarily conducive to the personal family situation you had at the time.
So the irony is I actually started Taygan Consulting with that exact design in mind. I knew that I needed to spend Fridays at the doctor or the therapist with my child. And I created an organization where nobody was allowed to work 40 hours. I didn't even write contracts for 40 hours a week. The most I would write was 24. I don't want to employ anybody that needs or wanted to work for 40 hours a week on a client. Because I was writing, it was independent consulting. I wanted people to know that they could earn a living. They could build a network. And clients, I've always struggled in the world of consulting since the very, very beginning. A company, a sponsor of a contract, a sponsor of a consulting engagement doesn't always need us 40 hours a week. They can't spend all their time with us. They can't get all that work done either. So I never understood the dynamic nature of writing these contracts that were like 6 people, 40 hours a week for a year. And I thought that seemed excessive. I wanted to allow everyone to have the flexibility that they needed and wanted. And when you ran out of money, you ran out of money. But I wrote it for 24 hours a week so that we could actually get the work done. And we did that. Sometimes it was 20 hours. Sometimes it was 30 hours a week. And you will figure that out over time. I'd like to believe that that is very possible. And we still practice that at Alliant Consulting. Not every contract is written for 40 hours a week. I want to serve the need of the client at the pace they want to be served. And I'm also happy to write contracts for 2 hours a week. Mm-hmm. So if that's all you need as well, maybe you just need advice. Yeah. Maybe you just need a safe place to have a conversation with no one is going to judge you, but you've got some intense content that you need to, do you have an idea for this? Yes, we do. So I try to make it work.
It's interesting too, because in previous conversation you shared with me, and I'll ask you for the number because I don't remember it, but you have a very predominantly female leadership team. And I actually think those things are probably tied. What you're talking about the realistic nature of having some flexibility, et cetera, and the fact that you've built, this predominantly female team. While I would say that doesn't necessarily seem like that was your intent, but it was the result of this really realistic approach. And frankly, like you expect excellence at the same time. So just tell me more about that and the team you've built.
So I'll go back. So TayganPoint was 74% women. I was very proud of that. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was not originally done by design, but it was done so that anyone who wanted to work with a flexible schedule could find a profession. Now, did we pay the most? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. Did we have the most rewarding work? Oh, yes, we did. Like we were working with the coolest companies.
That's awesome.
Yeah, truly, all the big Fortune 500. And I love to be able to say that. Today, interestingly enough, we are still 70%, at least 70% women. And that's also not by design, interestingly enough, but it is by talent. Mm-hmm. Because currently at Alliant Consulting, we have a 1 degree of separation methodology at the moment. Because we're small, we're growing. Yeah. And the reality is we rely on people to give us referrals. Who I want to refer a friend, a person I've worked with in the past. And the question we ask is always the same. If you were unable to go to your most prized client, would you send this person to represent you? And if you hesitate, if you blink, the answer is no. Then that's not the right person. I love that. And at the moment, people are just referring the people that they trust can do the great work.
That's great. That's great. If you were to go back to the moment when you first left, this big consulting job and were striking out on your own, what would you do today? Maybe the same, and what would you do differently from when you did this before?
Something very simple. I'd have a plan. I did not have a plan.
Even though it worked out, you would have a plan?
I would.
Yeah.
So if I really dig a little deeper in the story, I left a great role, a great job at IBM out of fear. Not of my job, but of my family. Like I was like, I was here to serve my family and that's it. But I will tell you, I did not think about, oh my gosh, I will have no money. Like I was mono-focused in solving for myself. It was very selfish. I was mono-solving. I probably should have spent 5 minutes thinking about a backup plan in the event it didn't work. So I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I would say have a little bit of a plan. I would have called someone and said, what's it like to be an independent consultant? How do you get a job? How do you find work? If you can't sell your own work, how do you find work? And the irony is, those are the questions that people call me about now, and I have answers. Yeah. I have a whole network of how to put independent consultants into play. I have a frequently asked questions document that I started writing right after I started my consulting firm. I think it's up to 23 pages now.
You should publish it.
Maybe I will. Maybe one day. Of what it means. Like, how do you become an independent consultant? Where do you go? How do you figure it out? And I have answers to all those things. Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you ever wanted to, you could also build a business on that of your own experience and how to do it. But I know for you, it's been just something you enjoy doing and enjoy the mentorship. As you think about the technology, for instance, like even I'm going back to the moment when you're with your daughter at these appointments and you're suddenly starting to get calls, like, I don't know the exact timing on it, but I imagine it wasn't a time when you posted something on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm open for business. How has technology changed the approach to building a business on your own, and what tools would you use today if you were starting out?
Oh, that is an excellent question. And you're absolutely right. Back in the day, it really was word of mouth. It was telephone calls. It was, hey friend, do you remember me? I'm out here. Think of me if you need something. But today you need to work that network, because networking is personal. It is not random drops of, if there's one thing I absolutely cannot stand is on LinkedIn, these random emails. Hi, would you like to be a franchise owner? No, I would not.
I get a lot of those, and they've gotten worse with AI.
And they've gotten worse. Yes, exactly.
Semi-customized, but the volume that you can do them at is crazy now.
It's crazy now, exactly. But most certainly, the job of starting an organization on a shoestring is letting people know that you exist. But the most important thing, the single most important thing, is to be able to explain what your superpower is and why they should call you. And if you can't do that, they won't know why to call you. Therefore, they won't. So if there was a message that I was giving to anyone starting out, be very clear on what you and your business does and why someone needs you or your service or your product.
I think that's really smart. I mean, one of the things I found is marketing for a consulting business is very sort of top of the funnel, build awareness, because you also don't know when someone is going to be in the moment of needing your services. So you need to explain it in a way that when they have the problem that you can solve, you are top on their list to solve it.
Correct. It's exactly right. It's about clarity of message. That's it.
You've given great advice over the last 40 minutes or so. Anything else, what other advice would you give someone who's at a transition, potentially dealing with some of the maybe personal challenges and trying to marry the personal and professional?
I'm going to go back to something I think I've already said, which is call someone. Talk it out with someone. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Where are you going to go first? And where are you going to go up to 30? Like, I want to know what you're going to do for the first 30 days. That will be very telling on whether or not you will likely be as successful as you want to be. And I would encourage people to be prepared. It's not easy out there.
No,
it's not. I wish it was. I wish it was. Every day I wish it was better. It's hard. It's very hard.
Excellent. Well, Joy, you are an inspiration, and it's great to be able to learn more about your story and share it through this platform. So thank you so much for joining. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and Alliant, the work you're doing there?
Well, I'm just going to give you my email address. Joy.
Perfect.
Just make it joy.taylor@alliantgroup.com. Please
Wonderful.
Write me. Please. I will return the email. I will set up time. Promise.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Self-Funded. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd also love for you to leave a review and share what you're most excited about on your own self-funded journey. And if you want to go deeper, check out my Substack. You'll find the link below. Until next time, keep carving your own path.